saw Democratic lawmakers trying to get into the Department of Education earlier today.
Oh, I see the same ones. I see Maxine Waters, a lowlife. I see, all these people. They don't love our country. They don't love our country. We want great education. So they rank 40 countries in education. We're ranked dead last. But the good news is we're number one in one category. You know what that is? Cost per pupil. We spend more per pupil than any other country in the world. You look at Norway, Denmark, Sweden, various countries all up and down, Finland, China does very well in education. And then you look at us. We spend much more money than they do per pupil or any other way, but we spend much more money than they do, and yet we're ranked this year, Biden's last year, congratulations, Joe, we're ranked dead last. So what I want to see is education. Number one, I like choice. We all like choice. But beyond choice, long beyond choice, I want to see it go back to the states where great states that do so well have no debt. They're operated brilliantly. They'll be as good as Norway or Denmark or Sweden or any of the other highly ranked countries. They'll be, probably have 35 to 38 states will be right at the top. And the rest will come along. They'll have to come along competitively. And by the way, we'll be spending a lot less money. And we'll have great education.
Walter Blanks Jr. joining us now, American Federation for Children spokesperson and the first recipient of the group's private school choice program. Good to have you on. It is hard to believe some of the things that they are saying right now in the wake of report cards coming out for this nation that are just atrocious.
Yeah, it's good to be with you, Sandra. And you're absolutely right. Like, where was this outrage when the NAEP scores came out? Where was this outrage when I was in a failing school that wasn't serving me and my parents had no kind of options? School choice was the difference maker for me. And that's why President Trump is so passionate about school choice and really passing the Educational Choice for Children Act. Congress needs to step up, and Congress needs to follow the president's lead on this. And even President Trump, not only did he campaign on school choice, he picked Linda McMahon to lead the Department of Education to ensure that families were in the driver's seat of their children's education. This is extremely important across the country, and we should make sure that families and parents are leading this discussion.
Okay, so that report card, guys, if we have it, can we pop it up on the screen? I mean, this is what you're suggesting they should be outraged about, right? This comes out and you've got a drop in fourth grade math and reading proficiency and grade 8, which was already bad, dropping even more points just over a 5-year period. But you're not hearing that. This is what you did hear from those Democrats at the Department of Education today. Listen.
Okay, we're coming in. We're coming in. We're coming in. Don't lock the door. We're coming in. Who are you?
You're not coming in.
Who are you?
Who under whose
Who are
orders?
you?
Who are you?
Who are you?
Who are you, sir?
Do you have business here?
Yes. I have sent the secretary. I've sent the assistant secretary a letter alerting her that we would be here today, and we've asked her for a meeting.
Yeah, I don't know that that's been accepted, so until that's accepted.
Who are you?
What
do you have? And what do you do here?
What do you do here?
Security responsibility.
Get out of the way. We pay for your job. We pay you.
We're members of Congress.
We are here.
Nobody has accepted a meeting.
Of Congress.
You are.
We haven't heard that from the secretary. We haven't heard that from her spokesman.
I'm relaying that.
You are not the spokesman for the department. You are a security guard.
We're coming in.
Okay.
We're coming in.
So what we did hear from the DOE was this, a statement. The protest was organized by members of Congress who were exercising their First Amendment rights, which they are at liberty to do. They did not have any scheduled appointments, and the protest has since ended. But imagine, to your point, if we had seen that outrage when these report cards were coming out. I mean, parents should be furious at what's happening in the public school systems and the lack of attention that they're getting. They were demanding that they be let through those doors so that they can get back to work advocating for our nation's children. You'd think that would be a good enough reason, that report card.
Yeah, and let's be very clear what this is about. This is not about children. This is not about academic outcomes. This is about the bureaucracy protecting itself. Their perceived power is threatened because now parents have the power and have the ability, and that's what they're fighting for. That's what they're defending. And like you said, students are falling through the cracks, and they have been for 4 decades now. Where is the outrage for that? And how do we ensure that parents and families have access to the best education across the board that fits their needs? And that's why I'm so excited about not only President Trump's pick in Linda McMahon, but also the Educational Choice for Children Act. Congress needs to pass it now and ensure that every child has access to a high quality education.
Yeah, and maybe there'll be a question about that in the news conference. You never know what'll come up, but certainly a lot of questions over what the plans are for the Department of Education. Will they dismantle it, rework it, take it apart and rebuild it? We will see what is in store. Appreciate you joining us, sir. Thank you so much.
Sunday anchor Shannon Bream, also in her red, way to represent. One more thing from Pam Bondi. This is about the crackdown against sanctuary cities.
What they're doing is they are choosing illegal aliens over the safety and security of their own citizens and the men and women of law enforcement who are out there trying to protect their citizens. Not only did we sue today the city of Chicago, we sued the state of Illinois, we sued the mayor, we sued the governor, and we sued others. And let me be very clear, if you don't comply with federal law, you're going to be next.
Shannon, how will the city of Chicago handle all of that firepower?
Well, Dana, as you know, they've been very defiant. And what they've heard from is their local citizens who say, why in the world are you prioritizing other folks in this community who came here without the proper legal means over us when our communities are suffering, they're dying, they're struggling. So you've got the feds now. He's got his local folks. Mayor Brandon Johnson is going to have his hands full. I think the interesting thing is, as you heard there from the Attorney General, they're going to go after funding streams. But again, the possibility that local and state officials themselves could get in trouble, legal trouble. If you'll remember the original executive orders from President Trump, they talked about this, cutting not only the funding streams, but possibly civil and criminal actions against people that they believe are impeding or actively stopping ICE from doing its federal enforcement job.
You know, Shannon, I want to ask you about the state attorneys general issuing this new statement on their lawsuit about DOGE access to sensitive personal information. This seems to be becoming a bigger and bigger, fighting point for Democrats. In that statement, it reads, this level of access for unauthorized individuals is unlawful, unprecedented, and unacceptable. DOGE has no authority to access this information which they explicitly sought in order to block critical payments that millions of Americans rely on. We will be filing a lawsuit to stop this injustice. So there's 13 states that are vowing to file lawsuits. We've got a list of them. Is it just this, or is this just a sign of the times and a growing number of Democrats who are just trying to fight Trump's agenda?
Yeah, and I think that's what they're going to do. They say the fight is now in the courts because that's where they're going to have to go for every single one of these things that filters out from the executive branch. Remember, too, the executive order that created DOGE actually took an entity that already existed, the United States Digital Service Office, and they just retooled it. So those who are supporting DOGE say, listen, the underlying legal framework for this entity already existed. The president has repurposed it to this DOGE mission. But you do have lawsuits from federal employees, their unions. You've got it now coming apparently from these attorneys general as well. It is going to be a legal all hands on deck battle over all this executive action because, of course, much easier to flood the zone with that than it is to get things done legislatively on the Hill that take a lot more time and in most cases some level of bipartisanship and cooperation.
Shannon, I don't know if you can see this, but let me describe something that's happening live to you right now. There are about a dozen lawmakers, Democrats, attempting to get a meeting with the acting education secretary. This comes as President Trump has said the Department of Education might be something where Secretary McMahon, if she's confirmed, would get herself out of a job. And also you had the former Secretary of Education, Betsy DeVos, writing yesterday in the Free Press. She thinks the Department of Education should be eliminated. This is one of those things where they're probably not going to get access to this building, but the Democrats are flummoxed as to how to deal with this, Shannon.
Yeah, Dana, I think you're right. We see them showing up and protesting outside of a number of buildings, or actually, as we saw on Capitol Hill yesterday, I think it was, actually forcing themselves and their way into a meeting that they wanted to be a part of. And I think right now they feel like chaos is the strategy. I think that was the line that was in Playbook maybe this morning, talking about the fact that they know that they're going to be overwhelmed with all of these actions, all the things that they, are trying to get a hold of. They're showing up. We've seen protests. We've seen we're at war. We've seen them say, take this to the streets. It does feel like the Democrats are kind of back on their heels trying to get control of the messaging, much less the substance of all these different things that are happening, Dana.
And I think the one congressman I can make out there is taking the photograph right now. I believe that's Maxwell Frost, and they're talking to a security guard. So let me just turn it back over to Sandra to ask you another question as we watch these Democrats who, I guess it's performative art in a way, Sandra, to try to make a point.
Absolutely. You notice the camera's up, and you're noting Maxwell Frost, the congressman from Florida, in the picture there. Apparently, this is a security guard. But Shannon, obviously, this is just further signs of what is to come. I spoke with Caroline Leavitt, the press secretary, yesterday, and asked her about the president's intentions with the Department of Education. They're not detailing exactly where they're going with this, but there has been a lot of talk about dismantling it altogether or reworking it, but we just don't know, and that uncertainty leads to a lot of this.
It does. And conservatives have been talking about this for a long time, that they feel like states are much better equipped to handle the education system. It's closer to the parents, it's closer to the people that are directly involved, the students as well. So it's one of those agencies that has been targeted by conservatives to say this doesn't need to be this federal behemoth that has all of this money, when states and localities and local school districts know much more about what their students need. They are much more accountable to the parents who show up at these meetings, which we've seen in the last few years, to demand answers and accountability for their kids. So not surprising that there would be this conversation about taking this away from the federal level and sending it back to local and state. But I think ideally for conservatives, they want it as local as possible. And that means a threat to the federal agency that now exists.
Shannon, let's try to see if we can hear anything going on.
On your own behalf, were you told to come out here and block members of Congress?
Do they know that we're here?
Max, ask the question again. That's the important.
Were you told, are you making this decision to stand in front of this door on your own behalf, on behalf of the Department of Education, or were you told to come out here and block members of Congress from going to the desk?
I'm doing my job.
So everybody's freelancing.
What is that? We're doing our jobs. We're trying to save your jobs.
It's a non-responsive.
Show them your ID. Were you told to stand here, or did you decide to stand here and block members of Congress from entering the Department of Education?
To federal buildings.
We're allowed in there.
So a private security contractor
Do you know who members of Congress are?
members of
We're all
Congress.
members of Congress.
Maybe he doesn't understand. Do you
A private
understand who
security
members of Congress
contractor
are?
is making the decision to block members of Congress from a public access entrance.
I don't think he knows.
You have the authority
what
as a
Congress
private
is or
security
what we do.
contractor to block members of Congress. That has been knighted and granted to you.
You have to at least let us go to the desk.
Yeah. They sending the guns out.
As many
Oh
declarations you
my,
want.
look at
Nothing's going
that.
to change.
Who told you to do this? Open the door.
I see your name.
So do you understand who members of Congress
I
are?
got it, yeah.
And you don't care. Who are we then?
I got the job to do.
You don't care. We have a job to do.
We're not dangerous people. We're not, I don't know, security. There are no thieves and thugs out here. We're members of Congress. We're parents, we're teachers.
Each of us.
There's our ID, right there.
We were elected to do this.
This is our job.
This is our job. We're doing our job.
Oh wow.
You're securing this building against who?
Members of Congress.
Who is the Congress? Who are you
The people.
protecting in
Against
this?
members of the people's
So
house
this
who
is the
represent the
beginning of
people.
full transparency of this administration.
That's right.
The administration that talked about they're going to open the doors to all of these things and show the American public what is going on. They won't
Transparency.
even open the door to this building to
Go to the
members of
visitor's
Congress.
desk.
We are not posing any threat here. No, we are not dangerous people. We have not done
won't even
anything.
let us
We're
talk to
trying
the
to
Department of
request
Education.
a meeting, and they have a private security contractor who on his own is making decisions on behalf of the Department of Education.
So Congresswoman Hayes, what you're saying is they're not, they allow billionaires and his minions to come in
I don't
to
know
this
who
building.
he is. I don't know who he is, but I know who I am.
allow-
And I'm a member of Congress with oversight responsibilities trying to request a meeting, and a private security contractor is not allowing me to enter the building.
They allow billionaires to go into this building, but not the people's representatives. They allow billionaires and their cronies to go in, but not, there's a lack of transparency here. The members of Congress, the people's representatives are not allowed in. This is not transparent.
They're locking our kids out. Well, not only are they not letting us in, now they've called the Department of Homeland Security. We are members of Congress here to talk with the Department of Education, and they're treating us.
The kids deserve to have us go in and fight for them.
This is appalling.
Children of this country deserve that battle.
This is a public institution. This is not Russia. Let the camera see him. Let the camera see him. This man here.
We are members of Congress.
Come in.
They're
and
blocking
I want you to
us.
see this man here, who is a federal employee. He told us.
No, he's not.
Are you a federal employee? No. Huh?
Yes.
No, he said he's a federal employee. We pay him. We raise money to make sure that we have a Department of Education. Everybody that's hired at the Department of Education are here because we pay for them to be here. He's standing here today, blocking the door, and he can't give us a good reason why he's blocking this door.
Make sure they see right here, all access entrance.
Well, and I think it should be clear to parents in the United States, if you want to advocate on behalf of your children, you are not allowed to come into this building where you pay taxes. Parents who have children who are disabled, access is being blocked. You voted for members of Congress to advocate on behalf of your children. Children with disabilities, for young women who have been victims of sexual assault in our classrooms, on our school grounds. Members of OCR are fighting for your children. We are not allowed in the building to talk to them. We are not allowed to advocate on behalf of America's children. America, we have a problem.
Now, everybody stand back.
All right, so this is the Department of Education. You've got members of Congress from the Democratic side of the aisle trying to get in the building. You have a security guard who never wanted to be on television today, basically doing his job and denying them access. It is interesting that Fox News is the only one covering this live, and apparently this is what the Democrats want, right? They want to be on television. That's Maxine Waters complaining, Sandra, that they can't get in the building. And then you had other members of Congress saying that if you want to get in and fight for your children, you're not allowed. But we had some news this week that would make it sound like that's a little bit too late, guys.
Our nation's report card was shocking. The report card showed 7 out of 10 fourth graders are not proficient readers, Dana, a number that has worsened since the last report card in 2022. Worse, the numbers haven't improved in 3 decades. We're seeing the same thing for the middle schoolers at the 8th grade level. Less than a third of American students enter high school with the reading and comprehension skills that they need at that point in their lives. I mean, you talk about not getting access to the building, you're hearing from these folks, to go advocate for the kids. Well, what have they done lately, right? That report card has not improved. In fact, our nation's report card has worsened. There's a huge problem at the public school, with the public school system in this country, and it has been failing our nation's children.
Shannon Brain, let's bring you in as Maxine Waters continues to berate the security guard.
Yeah, and listen, this is a great optic for Democrats who will want to use this and go out. You're going to see this stuff everywhere, probably. They've already got their teams rolling on it. And certainly this is what you do in Washington. There's the messaging and the optics of this, too. But I would point back to how many GOP lawmakers just earlier this week, Senator Joni Ernst said every time she tried to get answers from USAID, and I'm not saying she showed up physically, she may have, but every time that members of Congress try to get information from a federal agency, there can be an issue. She talked about that. Talked to Senator Chuck Grassley, who has sent subpoenas and requests for information all over to federal agencies, to the DOJ, to all kinds of places, only to be told basically talk to the hand and not get the information. So this is a physical showing up and not getting to where you want to go, but you may get the optics that you want. But Republican members on the Hill will tell you many, many times they've tried to get information from federal agencies, maybe not in a physical sense, but very much in a way that they claim they also have access to information and have been told, no, you're not getting it, or met with silence.
Wow. Yeah, we put the report card on the screen. You see the red arrows. That is the decline in the performance of our nation's children in math and reading in grades 4 and 8. But you obviously are looking at Democrats as part of this agenda that has been laid out, trying to obstruct. We don't know what the exact plans are, right, Shannon? The White House has still not been clear where they're going to go with this, but they are certainly highlighting this as a serious problem in this country. We don't know exactly what is happening here. We're not told exactly why this person's not letting them into the building, but certainly he said, we heard him say a moment ago, he's doing his job, so he's been asked to do this. But Shannon, maybe we'll get some clarity soon on this.
Yeah, I mean, it would be interesting to me if they did go into the building, what would happen next? I mean, I think that they want to make a protest. They want to ask questions about what's going to happen, but I'm not sure what would be accomplished if they did go inside. There's not a confirmed Department of Education secretary. As you said, we don't know what the policy is going to be moving forward, but we know there's serious questions about how the department is functioning, what it's been focusing on, where it's been spending its money, and what that says in contrast to how states and localities may be better equipped to handle it. At least that's the argument from conservatives.
Shannon Bream, thanks for hanging with us. Linda McMahon is President Trump's nominee to head the Department of Education. That confirmation hearing will take place next Thursday, February 13th. And I guess Maxine Waters is just going to stay out there. We're going to take a quick break.
Former Secretary of Education under President Reagan and a Fox News contributor. Bill, very good to have you here. You know, the president has spoken out about what he sees as a war, really, against religion, against faith. And this was a pushback towards that by Joe Scarborough this morning for this initiative and this faith office. Watch this.
If you're trying to bring the country together, you can pass on the whole Democrats are godless Marxists because, yeah, maybe the most intense of the base believe it, but it's kind of hard to spread that message at the same time you're destroying PEPFAR.
Yep.
At the same time, you're destroying all these other aid efforts.
So we don't have any indication yet that PEPFAR will be destroyed as part of this effort that is ongoing. It's been a very successful presidential AIDS program. But with regard to the faith office that is going to open, and what Joe Scarborough was referring to there was that at the prayer breakfast yesterday, Bill, President Trump said, you know, about the opposing side, they oppose religion, they oppose God, they have lost their confidence. What do you say about all this, Bill?
Well, he's absolutely right. And I think he had a moment there in Butler. The president himself will admit he has not been a deeply religious person, but I think he's given it a lot more thought since Butler, Pennsylvania, and that assassination attempt. And what we're talking about here is basically the war of the elites who think of themselves as better and smarter, and then they tend to despise, hate, what regular, ordinary, everyday people like. The Latin, there's a phrase in Latin you may remember from Catholic school, I do, odi profanum vulgus. I hate the vulgar crowd. And if the crowd likes it, be it football or faith or family, then we're going to have a different point of view. Look, Christianity has rules, and a lot of the elites don't like those rules. Christianity also represents the inheritance of a tradition. You know, when I was in office, I did a survey and asked both liberals and conservatives the 5 most important books that every student should be familiar with. There was agreement, consensus on number 1, the Bible, the single most important piece of literature.
Interesting.
Whether you like it or not, it is the most consequential. But what the president's talking about is that peaceful protesters outside an abortion clinic get surveyed and maybe arrested, while people burning down our cities do not.
Yeah, exactly. Very quickly, I want to play this. Maxine Waters sought outside of the Department of Education today. She's very riled up suddenly about education, and she wanted to get inside the doors as this entity is threatened. Watch this.
Were you told to stand here?
Yeah, were you told to deny members of Congress from entering this building?
There's no business purpose to be here, so that's why.
But why was it necessary? Are they prepared to shoot us? We want in.
This is a civil rights violation.
The man who blocked the doors of the Department of, hold your face up so they can see you. Department of Education, get a good copy of him. Let him get recorded in history for what he's doing today. Let his children see him. What's your name? Tell us your name. Give me that ID again.
Harassing this poor guy who's standing at the door of the agency. You heard what she said. What do you think, Bill?
Yeah, security guy. Yeah. Well, actually, civilization existed before the Department of Education. I was there once. I was the secretary once, and we let people in. Jesse Jackson used to come in and talk to me. She would have been welcome to come in. But the president wants to change that department. And he's right. Send most of this back to the states where it belongs. Education belongs to the states, belongs to the people. And he's absolutely right about our expenditures and our performance. They are inverse.
Yeah, we've spent $1 trillion on the Department of Education, and the gap between the low-performing and the high-performing students has gotten wider since 1980 when it was established. That's a failure. That's what we would call a failure. Thank you, Bill.
That's
Always
correct.
great to see you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Well, Democratic lawmakers attempted to storm the Department of Education in Washington this morning, but were denied entry into the building. The stunt comes as President Trump is considering abolishing the department. Watch.
We're coming in. We're coming in. We're coming in. Don't block the door. We're coming in. Who are you?
You're not coming in. Do you have business here?
Yes. What do you do here?
What do you do here?
Get out of the way.
Were you told to stand here?
There's no business purpose to be here, so that's why.
Why would there not be? Why would there not be?
There's no business purpose.
There are no thieves and thugs out here.
Are they prepared to shoot us? This is going to go out in history. The man who blocked the doors of the Department of, hold your face up so they can see you. Department of Education.
We are not a threat to security. We're members of Congress.
This is an outrage.
So what are you going to do? You're going to beat us up if we go in?
Oh, those members of Congress earning their salary as usual. This is Outnumbered, everyone. Welcome. I'm Emily Campagno, and joining me today is Martha McCallum, anchor and executive editor of The Story and co-anchor of Fox News election coverage. Cheryl Casoni, Fox Business anchor and host of American Dream Home on Fox Business. Dr. Nicole Saphier, Fox News contributor and board-certified physician. And Griff Jenkins, Fox News national correspondent. Griff, an exciting morning, but I think the excitement was pretty contained to the Democrat Party that pretty much accomplished nothing other than showing us that they want to do stunts for a living.
Well, that's not true, Emily. Maxine Waters proves she can't open a door. And, I didn't have storming the Department of Education on my bingo card today. The backstory for context, like 50 to 80 Democrats led by Congressman Mark Takano, a Democrat, and sent a letter yesterday to the acting Secretary of Education saying, we want a meeting. They didn't get a response, and so they decided to show up and storm the door. A little bit out of polite form, I would say. But at the end of the day, it's certainly an incident that shows that the Democrats were reaching a certain level of sort of desperation between holding press conferences, attacking everything that President Trump and this administration is trying to do, to now trying to put the focus. And I feel bad for that poor staffer that Maxine Waters is saying, let the history show this man won't let me in. Come on, give me a break.
Yeah, Martha, my question also is, where was the storming of the DOE when we started learning how abysmal test scores are, how poorly educated our children are? Where's the outrage over the actual product of our school systems? We can pop up on the screen exactly those numbers, right? That's why we're looking to overhaul the Department of Education. Math scores here for 4th and 8th grade, you guys, down 4 and 8 points from 2019 to last year, respectively. And reading scores for those same grades down 5 points.
Well, it's a great question. One thing we definitely learned this morning and have learned this week is that Maxine Waters loves to go places and yell at people very loudly. I'm not sure what has been accomplished by that. Remember when she said to go to restaurants and get in people's faces? Anyone who worked for the Trump administration, that's what she wanted people to do. That was her goal. Go yell in their faces. So that's what she's doing. But that being said, the Department of Education was created in 1980. Its focus was to make sure that kids on the lower end of the education spectrum caught up, okay? the gap is now wider than it was in 1980, and we saw what happened during COVID. So they've received a huge F on their report card. They have literally failed at their mission, which was to improve the education level of America's students. And Betsy DeVos wrote today, you know, she tried to fix it for 4 years. She said the bureaucracy is so deeply entrenched, it's never going to happen. And frankly, American students will be better off without it.
Because isn't that the point, Doctor? The point of the DOE was to improve and ensure quality education. So if that has failed, then why shouldn't the Democrats be open to an overhaul that puts at its center, instead of the bureaucracy, actually students' performance? The more money we've pumped in, the more abysmal the test scores and performance has been on the student level. I don't quite know what they want to protect here.
Well, I think we saw with the 2024 election that Democrats will not move off of their talking points because they don't want to admit that they were wrong. Maxine Waters is not the only one who's been yelling. Remember, there were parents in 2020 and 2021 going to school board meetings, and they were yelling as well. They were saying, actually, our children's education is getting worse. They were labeled domestic terrorists. And now it is irresponsible for us to say that all of these test scores are just because of what happened during COVID. Yes, we saw the chronic absenteeism. Yes, the remote learning. And yes, we are going to play catch up from that for years to come. But the widening of the performance gap, which Martha was just mentioning, that happened before COVID, that we were starting to see that widening from the highest to lowest performers starting in 2013, really widened in 2018. And one of the things that we have to call into question was that's when you started seeing some of the curriculum changes to insert some of those social issues, the CRT, and a lot of the race-based curricula. All of a sudden, they went away from focusing on the fundamentals, the reading, the math, and the science, and they're talking more about social issues. So we have to get away from this. I understand. I mean, President Trump campaigned on he was getting rid of the DOE, or at least he was going to look into it and shake it up, which he's been promising to do. There's no surprise this is happening. And shame on them for saying we shouldn't be doing something for the DOE. They have failed our children miserably.
Yeah, remember the CDC years ago came out, and the subsequent media around it, the titles were, "The kids are not okay."
Yeah, well, I mean, to Martha's point, and to your point as well, you know, the bottom rung of those kids that are underperforming, it has gotten worse during COVID. Where were all of those lawmakers during COVID when all the parents were, you know, being called, you're right, domestic terrorists? But like the money that we're spending at the DOE is the whole point of why the Trump administration wants to change this. Look, send it back to the states. I mean, these salaries are coming at the state level. That is the truth. Somebody you know very well, Randy Weingarten. She's making $500,000. Teachers don't make that. Let the states dig in and fix their own education problems. And by the way, they were given, Nicole, you mentioned the COVID pandemic, they were given $190 billion. That was allocated to them by Congress to get kids caught up after the pandemic because they had fallen so behind. And it hasn't happened. So it's a morass, it's a waste of money. And this goes to the broader picture of what we're seeing in the U.S. government. The DOE is a perfect example of why things need to change. And that report card, I think, needs to be looked at over and over and thrown in the faces of these Democratic lawmakers, which look ridiculous today. This is if that's all they have, I'm actually sad for them, and I'm sad for my Democratic friends. If this is how you think you're going to fix things, this isn't the way.
Can I just add to that? Because I think you put your finger on something important. That is, Randy Weingarten is long been the head of the American Federation of Teachers, the most powerful Democrat-leaning teachers union. So the storming of the building, these lawmakers all upset, that's because something is threatened. What's threatened? The slush fund going to the teachers union that has made them so all-powerful. But where was the accountability to blame them for the original failures that Martha brought up?
Do you remember that Randy Weingarten actually traveled to Ukraine to help them make sure that they can recover from the pandemic and the warfare in their educational systems? Yet here we are in the United States, and it's been a complete failure for the American children. But yet she was being flown, probably on taxpayer dollars, for her role to teach other countries how to have a robust education system.
Like, we haven't even talked about the universities, guys. I mean, the Department of Education also. Look at what's happened to the nation's universities since October 7th and these protests that have happened. All of that under this department's purview.
It's not results-oriented. They're not based on results that they get. And so there's no accountability whatsoever, and parents should be outraged, and they should be happy to toss this apple cart right over and see if we can have a better result.
Yeah. When I was in middle school, so 100 years ago, I was part of the Richmond Unified School District where it went bankrupt. So halfway through the school year, all of a sudden, we were going to go home and not have the rest of the year. Now, obviously, that crisis was averted. But we had to switch to the West Contra Costa Unified School District because all the loans were under RUSD. And so to even get any more money, we had to switch names. I mean, the labyrinth goes back decades and decades, and it's under that bureaucratic bloat. For anything to change for the betterment of children, indeed, the apple cart has to be
and give
tossed over.
parents control over their tax dollars. We spend more per student than most developed nations around the world, but we're not getting the results.
And President Trump just signed an executive order for that, for school choice.